come once again to discuss things.
Which of course the superior deeds.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentleman History Month. I am Sid Part 2. Oh wait, no, fuck, I fucked it up. Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentleman History Month, the month in which we discuss the contributions the geeky gentlemen have made to history, but that have been ignored by biased educational system. I think I'm on like year 4 or 5 of that joke, and it still has not gotten old. Shit, I might be on year 6 of that joke. So today we're reviewing a comic, and even though with 4 possible hosts, it's still come down to Alfie and I, because of course it has.
It's the power scaling, man.
I know,
it's
they
like
just
everyone else can keep up.
Just got Yamcha'd. I got cheated on by my girlfriend? No. The other kind of Yamcha. Oh, I got blown up? No, the other kind of Yamcha. Oh, yeah. So today we're discussing a comic series by Kieran Gillan. We're talking about the first 11 issues. This started in 2012 or 2013, and it is called Uber. This is the story of what if in the final days of World War II's Eastern Front, the Nazis' plans for a superhuman soldier had actually succeeded, and just what kind of effect that would have on the war. Alfie had talked about this on Twitter and was like, okay, that looks terrifying and fascinating, so I want to read that. And he was kind enough to pick it for History Month to give me a nice excuse to. I gotta ask, what put this on your radar?
So I was going through, well, it's such a weird thing to say this, but of all things that brought me to Nazis, it was Teen Titans. On my Geeks for Fun channel, I'm running a Teen Titans D&D campaign, and whenever I want to research how to write scenarios for like young adult heroes and stuff, I always tend to go to the person I think is probably the best at that, and that's Kieran Gillan. He over at Marvel did Young Avengers, and he also did Wicked and the Divine. And I'm always a really big fan of his work. I think he's pretty underrated. You don't see his name come off that much. So I was going through like what of his work that I haven't read. And this came up, and I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like anything he's done before. Like, this is so random. The guy who does, like, the cool, sexy, young teen superheroes doing this, of all things. So I was fascinated by that. And as I kept looking into it, I was like, wait, this is the one of the one recent comic books that Alan Moore says he likes. Okay. This has got so much intrigue and just bizarreness around this mad thought experiment of a comic. So I decided to pick it up and check it out. And genuinely am into alternative histories. Alternative History Hub on YouTube is one of my favorite channels. I love just theorizing and kind of, again, theorizing what if something new, but it's always kind of thought experiments about with history, especially when you really get to sit down and like discuss it with someone. You realize just how easily things could have gone a different way, or the people involved and the personalities, like how much of things is just mistakes and how much of people just fucking up. So when you apply supernatural to that as well, just even outside of just alternative history, you apply like a supernatural twinge to that, but you have the talent to keep it from becoming just I guess I should say, like, sometimes when you add supernatural things to history, it just takes the focus and you forget the history and it becomes a superhero story. What I liked about the pitch for this, and what I definitely think it succeeded in when I was reading it, is this never strays away from the fact that this is World War II with superpowers, but the World War II is still up front and center.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's one of the things I really like about it, and I think is probably most genius about it is, yes, superhuman soldiers would of course be like a game changer in a war, but I really found the choice of placement for it to be like one of the most fascinating choices about this, to like keep the drama super intense. Having it be that the first Panzermensch are released when Berlin is under fire. It's like it's happening, the day that Hitler's about to commit suicide. Like, that's in the book, is Hitler's literally about to kill himself. Eva Braun already has. Hitler's about to eat that fucking bullet. And then someone busts in the room. It's like, no, my Führer. That is a really, really interesting choice, and I think it pays off for them in dividends with the way that it works, because I really like the conversation that a couple of the generals have at a later point in the issues we read, where they're like, the Panzermensch and the battleships, they're great. We're still losing. Like, they have given us a final grasp at fresh air, but if things continue, even with this like pitiful little march that we're able to make with the Panzermensch, we're still going to lose. I really, really like that. That gave it like so much fucking drama.
Well, I think the best line for that, which is said really early on by one of the battleships, Sieglinde, who is probably like the, again, Nazi, but out of all of them, there's levels to this shit. As we get into this, there is levels of how depraved people are in this story. She says the line of like, a win, it's far too late for that, but we can ensure everyone loses. That's what this story is. This is what if Nazis got superheroes and superpowers, but it is not what if Nazis won the war. No, it's what if Nazis got the means to ensure everyone lost the war instead of just them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's really, really fucked when you get to that level, and like that's kind of what happens as it goes on. I mean, not to jump straight to the end, but like, I didn't know what to expect with how things would go. But I really didn't expect Hitler to be killed in the same issue that they killed Churchill. Mm-hmm. And for both of them to be killed by German super weapons, Like, that was really fascinating to me. You're right, there's levels to this, because there's the character Spears, who I'm not sure... Obviously, like, they name drop other really famous Nazis, like Goebbels and stuff. I forget the name of the guy that did the rocket. He gets a name drop. But, like, then there's other ones, and I'm like, I have to wonder if it's a real guy or if it's a fictional creation, but I really like the way that they're played, where Spears is one of the earliest Nazi commanders that you see. And his whole thing is like, no, like, Hitler's a dreamer, and he united the country under this vision and built up a war machine, but his ambitions, his lack of seeing the reality has led to, Berlin being shelled to near death. And so I'm dealing with the realism. I'm dealing with whether or not we can walk over bridges. I'm dealing with this, that, and the other thing. And that was just, I love that shit. That's great. To see that guy in there, and I think it's Spears who even at one point says, this is what happens when we elect a homeless Austrian into the leader. And it's like, yes, that's so good. The idea that there's like this eye rolling and this kind of, this bitterness behind the man kind of thing, because while it is true that Hitler enjoyed a cult of personality level of acclaim in Germany, there had to be people that weren't drinking the Kool-Aid within his ranks, but used him and Nazism to kind of climb the social ladder, social, political, military ladder. And so it gives the book a lot of dimension to put those guys in there. And of course, they're all evil. They're all Nazis, which is fascinating. And I like seeing them kind of acknowledge certain things, because again, all throughout the book, they're like, well, maybe this gives us the means now to negotiate a better surrender or something. And like, I think 2 or 3 times someone just goes, they found the camps. We're not going to be able to surrender. We're not going to be able to sue for peace. We're not going to be able to make last-minute allies and go after the communists together. That's not going to happen. I really like a lot of those scenes. It adds that level of complexity while maintaining the level of evil Nazi to a degree I really, really enjoyed.
Because I think it presents it in its way, and especially because as you read the book, Gillan at the end of every issue has a bit of a spiel about what that individual issue meant to him, what research he did for that, because he likes to be as factually accurate as he can with this, with specific dates and times and people. And obviously, with any historical fiction, there's only so much you can take that at the expense of a story, but I think this finds a really good balance. But because of that, how he writes the characters in those situations is very real. These are not cartoon characters on any side. These are real people who talk about it, how you imagine real people did talk about it. And we know that real people did talk about it. When you just sit with soldiers, and from every side, we sit with Russian soldiers, we sit with English soldiers, we sit with American soldiers, and we sit with Nazi soldiers, and even Japanese soldiers. We go all over, and all of them have very similar conversations. That gives you an insight into what it felt like to be in that specific detachment and that specific time in the world, where they're just fucking around. Some of them telling jokes. Some of them are scared shitless. There's no censoring of language. There's no censoring of anything in this book, which is I think needed to happen to really get across just how horrific this would be.
Yeah.
But it also really helps make you live in it, because it just feels so true to life. Everyone's written that you can buy. Even the characters that are made up feel like real people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing that I found really impressive is
you should update your Android
What
cleaner
the
now,
fuck?
or your phone can slow down and the battery will be drained faster.
Okay, that was odd.
Huh. The Nazis don't like us talking shit yet.
I guess. I was gonna look up some panels on the thing and as we talked, but my phone was not having those pop-ups. Okay, anyway, that completely derailed my train of thought.
Just the characters feeling like real people and not pop-ups.
Yes, exactly. That is a very good point. Because again, it's hard to know okay, is this a real person or is this based on a real person? Obviously Churchill's a real person. Hitler's a real person. But then you have some of the scientists and it's well, I mean, there were so many names and so many faces associated with the war. Kind of one of the things I find absolutely fascinating about World War II is how it was just absolute desperation to win, coupled with the most substantial gains in technological capability of humans since the Stone Age. You can argue Computer Age, but I still don't think so. Since the Stone Age, coupled with just fucking try anything. I don't care. And that was on all sides. It's such a fascinating little moment. It's in 4 to 5 years, humans went from just barely comprehending, flight technology. Like, we had it for a couple of years there. It happened shortly before World War One, and it continued on in development all throughout the 20s and into the 30s, into the beginning of the war. So, like, it's not like flight technology was new by World War II. But we go from barely understanding how to get off the fucking ground to by the end of the war, we know how to split the atom. And that just absolutely, like, the strides made in that moment just terrify me. And so it makes the setting of the super soldier, which is, of course, an actual thing. It always seems so silly in like, you watch like fucking Captain America movie or read comics or something. There's like, oh yeah, the World War II super soldier programs. It sounds like something that if you only knew comics, you'd think it was just a silly thing that's made up for the conceit of the story in a comic. But no, those were actual things. Like, Hitler gave the Olympic athletes for the German team methamphetamines and steroids to prove that he had the uber race. And that was the beginnings of a super soldier program. Obviously, the success rate, I guess you could call it, of the Panzermensch, the tank men, that we get here is something else entirely, but it's still just like fucking fascinating to me. I don't know.
And I think the best thing about that is it's not treated in the sense of some things where they very easily could have made it like an X-Men thing, or something to the extent of most superhero fiction where everyone has like different powers and like it's like different teams of people and there's like different things. It's like, no, there is a very clear set power set of what people they know how to make people do. And there's like classifications and there's like tiers and there's a very laboring manufacturing process, which becomes like a major thing that they have to deal with, of just who can make them and the cost it takes to make them and sending people out before they're ready. Is like all of that gets put into it to make them feel like, yeah, these are still weapons and they are treated as weapons and they have to be cared for like weapons. One of my favorite bits is when the scientists are talking about like Hitler traps them in a room because Hitler's like, you had these for a year. You had these for a year and you didn't tell me. And they did the comparison of the tank. It's like yeah, in World War One, to many the tank was a novelty, because no one understood them as tanks. Is you just send one on its own and it can be dealt with. You send a battalion and then you're fucked. And that was the plan with the tank men, is stockpile until they are strong enough and you have more of them so that you can send them out, and then they have nothing to do with them. The first strike, that first bit of surprise, is always your most effective strike. So you want to make sure that is as good as possible. So at the same time, it's like, yeah, they have to wait until the last moment. So Germany is just screwed because it is at the very last second. But at the same time, if they sent them out earlier and they make the point, is like, oh yeah, it wouldn't change anything, but now they can change things. So it's just like a very interesting, and like you just spell it out like that and you're like, oh yeah, I can buy that. I can 100% buy that as a tactical real life move that they had to consider, and it's fascinating.
And like I also like the way that Hitler's, because Hitler was like pretty fucking pathetic. Which I mean, hot take. Like Hitler's like really fucking pathetic. Like it's so fascinating that he creates like this myth of the Uberman, and it's like the perfect German, and he's not German, and he's got health problems, and he's never been like particularly strong or anything, and he's never been particularly talented at anything besides riling people up. And yet he's created this like grand, epic design. And so at first, when you've got one of the battleships like meeting Hitler, the guy's like, oh yeah, I'm doing what Hitler tells me. Oh, this feels so good. And then like he keeps getting to have dinner with the Fuhrer, and even like the guy that's like the most into the Nazism is just like, the Fuhrer does talk like a lot. It's just interesting how like Hitler doesn't compare to these things that have been created, these monstrosities, and how like no, like it's the strangest fucking thing. But really, there's only 3 characters that understand what the tank men are, and it's the 2 German battleships and the British spy scientist. Like those are the only ones that really get it. And it's fascinating because you have 2 characters who are Nazis, and yet they're the most sympathetic characters in the book, and yet they're also the ones that you keep hoping will die the most.
It's like a really good balance of, did you follow them? Not, you follow mainly Stephanie, the British scientist, the most, but even then, there is no like main character in this. This is very much, we are just jumping across battlefields and across the world to show what the next major historical event is. Seems to be what the structure of the story is. It isn't necessarily what's most dramatic. It's just like popping forth to seeing counters and reactions and the playing out of all the different factions. So when we do, because a lot of it is sent of like the Nazis gaining background and trying to basically just blitzkrieg everything with no real strategic goal, just the goal of like instilling fear to get people to just back off and just burn everything down because we got burned, is Hitler's kind of motto. He looks for opera, but like they clearly spell out, it's like, no, there are way more better tactical options we should do. And he's like, no, they fucked us, fuck Paris, go. It's like, Jesus. And that's what happens. So when you see the 2 battleships go out and do that, it's awful, and you're rooting for the Americans and the British to fuck them up. But then after it, and just, wow, shit, yeah, they have got a raw deal as well. Everyone's got a raw fucking deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really, really fascinating. Like, when the German generals are sitting around talking about strategy and, like, what they can do to give themselves ironically, the breathing room that they require, they're like, we have 3 battleships. We can afford to lose 1 if we lose them in a very tactically advantageous way. If we can get a lot of ground with 1 of them, we can afford to lose it. And they send the female one out to London, and it's like, yeah, no, you're not coming back from this. She knows she's being sent on a suicide mission. The other 2 battleships know she's being sent on a suicide mission. And it's just like, she doesn't even fucking believe in what she's fighting for, but she's already been turned into this, so like, what else does she have left? And then she just wants to feel human one last time, and she's gotta like go through, like, she wants to feel human one last time, so she has sex because she knows she won't be able to sweat. She won't be able to feel like a person again, so the closest thing she can get to that is having sex. But the only one there that can give it to her is the person she despises the most. It's just this, like, really fucked up layer of psychology. And at the same time, like, you kind of... It's written really well because you want to feel sorry for her. But then she ends that issue, or the next issue or whatever, by killing Winston Churchill. And, like, I'm no fan of Winston Churchill, but, like, come the fuck on.
I think that's something as well, we talked about Hitler, but I think another really interesting character in this that Gillan talks about, him having probably the most trouble writing because of there are so many different sides when talking about Churchill. How did you find Churchill in this?
I mean, I still think he's portrayed relatively benevolently. I don't think he's shown to be... What's the word I want here? like I think his death scene is kind of the like thing that casts him in a pretty positive light, because he tells everyone else to run away, and he tells the scientist Stephanie not to send in the unfinished battleship V2 that she's working on. He tells, like, he decides to make the sacrifice play. He is portrayed in like a tragic hero kind of way. And you know what? I 100% agree that's in Churchill's character. That is, I don't think I would want Churchill to be portrayed as a sniveling coward of like, no, keep me alive at any cost. The people depend on me. I don't think that's within Churchill's character. But at the same time, I don't feel like that Gillan goes out of his way. Let me put it this way. I don't think Gillan goes out of his way to show Churchill's more antiquated side, his more negative side. Like, I remember reading a letter Churchill sent back home from his soldiering days in Africa, and the quote that has always stuck in my mind is something to the effect of, finally, the power and supremacy of the British Empire has put the savage down for good. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's about the Zulu Wars. Which is just, I mean, that's kind of everything you need to know about Churchill, is he believed in the supremacy of the British Empire. And there's times that, like, Gillan kind of brushes it, but I don't think he nearly touches it as much as I might like to see. Like, I know he talks about, okay, well, we've got to leave this colony alone. We can't have a British Empire if we don't have a Britain. I'm like, it's not... You're kind of brushing it, but I don't think you're getting as far into it as you'd like. Because I think that what he chooses to show of Churchill is believable enough for what I know of Churchill. I also think that what he chooses to show of Stalin is believable enough for what I know of Stalin. But I think when you compare the portrayal of Churchill, the way that we see Churchill versus the way that we see Stalin, I think that is very telling of the kind of things that the author is willing to show. Yes, Stalin was brutal, and Stalin was uncompromising, and Stalin was, in a lot of ways, just as fanatical and just as dangerous as Hitler, depending on how far you want to get into certain things. But there's no even attempt, I feel, to cast any kind of a positive connotation on Stalin's actions. They just kind of show Stalin as kind of brutally reckless, but that's kind of what he had to do, because it was like they portray it really well. Britain has a fucking, English Channel. Britain hasn't been invaded since fucking William. Like it goes back a ways. 1029 or something was the last time Britain was invaded, and yet the Nazis marched straight into Paris, and then they were gonna double back and go straight into Moscow. So Stalin had like only a couple things on his side, and made decisions that are pretty horrific and have cast him in a very negative light historically. But if you were to put yourself in Stalin's shoes, it's hard not to at least see where those decisions come from. Like one of the out of the Allied powers, the ones that lost the most planes in World War II were the Russians, and it's because they got their fucking crop dusters up in the air and rammed straight into Luftwaffe. They also had the most German planes destroyed because of that tactic. So it's kind of crazy when you look at that, and like I really like, and I agree with the portrayal of Stalin. I feel like it is just it is framed in a more negative light than any of Churchill's actions are framed in this story.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point. I think it's definitely the case where there is the constant Churchill. Every time we see Churchill, he's always drinking, which is a good remark because people often really understand the fact that this dude was like he was a functioning alcoholic, but he was a massive alcoholic. But that was one of the things, and also I really like the moment where after Paris, after just the fucking travesty that happens in Paris, which is I think is like one of the best moments in the series that really tells you like how this is gonna go. Is like that's like the first major battle, and no one wins. Like they say, technically you could say the Allies win from like a mathematical standpoint, but other than that, no one won this one. And after that scene, Churchill just looks at a gun in his desk and then puts it away.
No
it's
walk
like that
for you
moment of,
today,
like,
Black Dog. I did like that a lot.
Like it's a very, which again, the first time we see Hitler, he's about to shoot himself. I don't think it is an accident that Churchill and Hitler die at the end. There are comparisons between those two in their displays of like propaganda and rallying the people and being seen as these figureheads. But definitely out of all the major historical leaders in this story, Churchill is framed as the most good, as you could say that. So I do think that is something that we could have maybe seen a little bit more.
Yeah, and I like the way that Stalin is portrayed when because I guess if there is a positive to infer from Stalin's portrayal, I like the brutalism, and I like the genius. It's subtle genius, but it's genius portrayed in the way that Stalin's portrayed. I thought was fascinating because like they talk about the prison camp where there's 420,000 prisoners, and he's like 1 in 40, 48. Do it. Like, it's just the most oh my god kind of thing. It's like if anyone takes it that doesn't have the gene, they are sure to die. But out of 420,000, we can get up to 48. Do it. And then it's like, honestly, the Soviets' tactics were a wild success. They received 101 tank men.
It's rough. Again, it's like it's just one of those fucking things where
that's
exactly to your
100% the
point.
Soviet tactic. That was 100% the Soviets' tactic. Because that's one of the few things they had is they had excess population that they could put between themselves and the Germans, and they could whittle the Germans down, and they brought them in and cut them off, and that's how they defeated the German army. It was absolutely brutal. When we talk about the invasion of Berlin, it's really interesting because both the British and the Americans had very little interest in taking Berlin. It really had no tactical advantage. It's so centralized to the country that there was really nothing you could do with it. They could surround it, and eventually Hitler would have to surrender. That's just how it had to go, or whoever took over after Hitler would have to surrender. There was no tactical advantage in taking Berlin. It was heavily armed, and it was completely insular. There's no tactical reason to take Berlin. The Soviets demanded to take Berlin as retribution for everything that they had to sacrifice and bleed in order to buy the Allies time to win the war. And there is something to that. You want to talk opera? There you go.
Yeah, that is one of the things as well, and it's not as much in this phase, but as the series keeps going, it does really focus heavily on Stalin and Russia specifically. And Gillan, to his point, he does make a really big emphasis on out of everyone on the war. It's like, it's so, you can't compare human suffering in that way, But if you had to, he's like, Russia got it the fucking worst by like a wide margin. And he goes into that really heavily. And then it informs the other futures of the series and kind of like what the focus shifts to, of like seeing how if the war kept going, would other nations be able to take that? And some don't, some do, and it's like it gets really into that. But just considering what's in these issues, definitely the Russia side is more of this is more focused on Britain and Germany. And everything else is just kind of the setup for what's coming in later parts of the series, but also it's showing the immediate reaction and the immediate arms race in very much the same way that happened with the bomb, except if the bomb was people. So yeah, seeing the different the ways of getting the tech, getting the mineral to be able to do to create the tank man, I think is really interesting, because again, you got the first one of like how they even found it worked in the first place, which was Germany just experimenting on people until they figured it out, which is that was the Nazi tactic, and that's what they fucking did, and it worked like a success apparently. But it's also like, Jesus, to even get here in the first place, atrocities had to be committed en masse, and then to keep it going.
And that's the thing I like, is like you talked about her as if she's closest to the thing that we have as a main character is the scientist Stephanie, and like literally when we're introduced to her, she is the one committing those atrocities, those experiments, you know? She is the one like literally administering death to a room full of people to find one individual, and then, oh no, you're just like all the others. Well, this experiment was a failure. Kill him too. And like that's what a spy is. Like, everyone's got the fucking James Bond idea of a spy. No one's got the fucking, yeah, no, your job is to go commit war crimes. Have fun. That's the James Bond movie I want.
Jesus, James Bond in this would piss his fucking pants.
So you want me to go seduce the 8-foot-tall Nazi woman? Well,
yeah, sure. I'll give her a go. So, like, I mean, that's one of those fucking things where, again, this world itself is so explored and like in depth and like set up so well. Just the scenario, you could do stuff like that. You could, obviously, you'd want to treat it with the same class that Gillan does, where like he knows he's treating very touchy subject matter and very intense subject matter, and he's not glorifying anything, so you wouldn't want to sacrifice that. But at the same time, he's built such a great premise here, and he's really fleshed it out like fully with, again, you got dates on every issue, nearly different scene transitions always give you the exact location, like the exact models of people and stuff. And I'm sure, and again, I've only like cursory knowledge of World 2. I'm sure if you were like a buff, this would be even more amazing to you, because again, the dude did his research, and obviously there's going to be changes and stuff like that, but it really does read more like a play-by-play of what would happen in one of many hypothetical scenarios. One thing I did want to talk about though, because I think because we've been writing a character very similar to this, and obviously we were talking about like the most popular World War II superheroes like Captain America, is they introduce like a Steve Trevor, they introduce like a Captain America character who backstory and everything and appearance is just meant to be Steve Rogers / Steve Trevor. Like 100, probably more so Steve Trevor, but 100% it's that guy. And he gets it like the fucking worst.
They had to use an industrial drill to commit euthanasia on him after he got fucked up by the one Nazi woman's halo effect. God damn, the idea that you'd live through that is the craziest thing in the world to me. And the fucking Stephanie carries around a picture of it just to try to convince other people not to do this to themselves. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I guess Steve Trevor would probably be the thing, because he's seen... Steve Rogers is always such like a idealized character, where Steve Trevor more often gets to be put kind of in the dirt a little bit more, which I like. So yeah, I'd agree with Steve Trevor. And yeah, he gets to become the Colossus, and he gets to become the American battleship class or British battleship class, whatever. And then they just, because of the restraints, he just doesn't have enough time to properly mature, to properly learn how to use the power that he's got, and so he just gets immediately wasted in the field. Is super fucking fascinating, because I don't know, there's a lot of examples of that in the war, of like kind of masterful weapons that were created, and like if they just got a little more time, they really would have gotten it. Like, again, the Germans had jets by the end of the war. Again, I talked about this. We go into World War II with amateur levels compared to today, amateur levels of understanding of flight capabilities and technologies. By the end of the war, the Nazis had jet fighters, and they were super effective, but they didn't have the means to build them in mass anymore, because of everything the Allies had taken from them. The Americans didn't have a fucking jet fighter. Like, we didn't even understand how to crack that technology yet. And we're the fucking, like, player in Civ who's off on a fucking island and no one can get to them, and they got all the resources. It's bullshit.
They're playing on creative mode.
I know, right? It's fucking, resources are free, guys. You shut the fuck up, you fucking bitch. And then the Soviets are the ones that like just fucking copy and paste from an American city. It like literally happened, and then they're like, "Wait, what?" Did you know about that? It's one of my favorite little factoids. Gary is a city here in Indiana. It was a big manufacturing city back in the day. Literally the street path, like everything, grid for grid. At the time, from Gary, Indiana, was just like plopped into the middle of a mountainous region in Russia to be a manufacturing hub, and the location was picked because it was more defensible, but they literally just plopped the design for Gary, Indiana into Russia because it was the most efficient thing they could think to do.
Boy.
I know,
It's
right?
a wild fucking time, man. So of course, they do this to the superhumans. Of course, we'd lead to this effect of not even just like how they're deployed. What I really like about it is it doesn't do the cheat of like, oh, they've just got Superman. Of like, oh, they can just fly across the world and the war's just over. There's just no way to counter it. I like the fact that they found a really good balance, but with like the halo effect and like the enhanced physical attributes, where like they are like invincible and you are always terrified of what they can do. But at the same time, you can 100% buy that if they just sent these guys out there, they'd get fucking annihilated by a proper army of soldiers with the right artillery. So it keeps that strategic element of, we've got the best thing, but it's not the best thing. It almost feels like kind of, especially as we get on, there's almost like a Dragon Ball-esque type of power scaling that goes on. Of like you have to trade for a certain amount of level to catch a vault, otherwise you'll just get shit stomped by someone else. But then you've got like, they start building a Hulk is what happens, and it never gets to get played out in the field because. And then the results of it are like way more like, because normally when we see the battleships and stuff, they're presented as like effectively like general superheroes. They're taller, they're bigger, they're muscular, and they're like peak human physical specimens or what have you. The stereotypical version of that. But then as we get to I forget the designation of the name, but it's like the Mark II battleship that Britain builds, and it's really. I know, probably the most noble fucking character in the whole thing. of the only reason why they agreed to do these procedures because they're like, you saw the camps. I have to find a way to stop them. So they let them do this to them, and this poor girl gets transformed into fucking Solomon Grundy Hulk, but like what that would actually look like if you did that to a person's body, and it's just awful.
That's not happened yet. Damn it!
Son of a bitch!
it's getting close. So it's like that's the reveal, like building up, but they don't actually show that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, that's definitely it. Is it the sniper woman then? That's gonna become the Hulk thing?
No, she's in Russia still. She's doing her own thing. She's that's the character Maria. She's like she pops up, but like she's legit my favorite character in the whole fucking thing. Like she's
got a great introduction. Like again, there's really good subtleties that I like about, or not subtleties. There's really good detail work that I like about this. The fact that like, you know, the Americans in Berlin are shown like committing rape and shit, and the American soldier goes up to the you know, he thinks she's a Nazi and he's gonna start trying to rape her too, and she goes, "Oh, I'll cut off your fucking dick," and she's a Russian sniper. And like, that's such a good choice to do there because it just kind of demonstrates how shaky that fucking alliance was of just how much those two sides did not like each other. I really like that. I will say, I think the thing I disliked the most about this, because it just, I think it's important, but I think this is how you should have opened Volume 2 as opposed to putting it in the middle of Volume 1, was the entire, like, it's one or maybe two issues in Japan, in the Eastern Theater.
Yes, 2 issues.
Yeah, I didn't like that. It felt really clunky to the, I guess the pace, the events of the rest of the book. It felt like, it just didn't feel like it belonged within the context of the story we were telling.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's definitely, I think that's where the pitfall of what I've been describing of it follows historical events rather than narrative structure. This is where that becomes a negative. Is it
because it's following things chronologically? I mean, I guess, but still, like, you could still follow events chronologically and then jump back and forth between events. That's not.
No, I agree with you. I think that is a mistake on his part. I think he just found the gimmick he was going with it and overcommitted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel like it really belonged. It felt like the fucking It felt like that scene in Iron Man 2, where it's just like, oh, here
Set
we
up
go.
the Avenger.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like it was too much setting up the sequel, because obviously it's like that's gonna be your American battleship, and I know like the that Uber goes for 27 issues. We're talking about the first 11, and then I know it got a sequel series or whatever you call it. Called Uber Invasion, and all I know about that is I saw the cover with the Statue of Liberty on it. I'm like, oh well, fuck.
Yeah, you could gauge what that means.
Oh yeah, fucking island play. Now what, bitch? Oh yeah. So I don't know. I think that was the one that just felt the most awkward. Not just because it's like diverging from everything we're following, but just because like. It just felt the most unbelievable that Japan just suddenly had tank men too, you know? That was like the, like I like that Japan only has the resources for 3 of them, right? I thought that was pretty cool. But also I like that I just didn't like the way that it interrupted the flow of the story we were reading. I really feel like I could have skipped those 2 issues until the start of the second volume.
No, I think you're on the money there. Because again, there's something wrong with the issues themselves. I quite like it. I think it's a very good setup, a very good twist at the end that you don't necessarily see coming, but then like informs, oh, this is why we're connecting and why we're following it. And it's good to be able to see, like, no, this is World War II. It's like everywhere in the world, but we get to see just how awful it was during Japan, and like that really harrowing scene where he's trying to give the little girl chocolate, and her, like what I assume is her mother just fucking pulls her away and pulls out a grenade and just kills them all in there, and it's just like, why are they so scared of us? And then his partner rightly says, oh, I don't know, no reason. It just shows the fucking tanks and the bodies that all the American soldiers have killed. And he's like, yeah. It's like, it's a good issue, but you're right. It's like the placement kind of kicks the pacing that you've been building up the previous issues a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. What else could we talk about with this? We've got a couple more minutes to fill. Damn it, I feel like I had something, now I can't remember. Fuck.
I guess just like interesting, like, because I've read the series up to, the series still hasn't finished, but not finished because of writing delays or anything. The company that publishes it went bankrupt.
Aww.
So Kieran Gillan has got one issue left that is done, but he can't publish it because of legal reasons.
That sucks.
It's really annoying. And then, so like, I just want to ask you then, like, just without knowing what's coming up and what's next, do you have any like ideas of like, this is where I would take it, or what you'd like to see, or how could something like this even end? Because even I don't know how it would end. Because this is just a scenario which again is like, everyone fucking loses.
Yeah, I don't know. That's it's an interesting question because like, for a while they were like, it's funny that this came out in 2013 because that was when a lot of things were doing this, and it was like actively kind of annoying. I'm glad that I got some distance from it before I read it, because I probably would not have enjoyed this in 2013. But I'm able to kind of take a step back from it now and appreciate it a little bit more. But like, you had like Man in the High Castle, and there was like 2 or 3 other things that like imagined a very similar scenario of like Germany winning the war comparatively. And it just kind of created this attitude of like, why can't we imagine like an alternate history where something fucking good happens? And I feel like the answer to that is because that probably wouldn't be as fascinating. Like, yeah, an alternate history where like in the Civil War was won in overnight, and they just completely destroyed the South, as opposed to letting it limp on and basically reinstate slavery via Jim Crow. Like, what about that alternate history of like, I mean, yeah, that would be the better world to live in, but it probably wouldn't be much more like narratively engaging as what we get with like Iron Man and the Iron Castle and stuff and this. So I don't know, like, that's the thing is when you try to imagine what the world becomes if the Nazis win, or what the world becomes if everybody loses World War II, I guess you just eventually get the apocalypse, right? I don't know what else you really derive from that. It's, I don't know where I would take this, how I would end this. I have to assume that the fucking atom bomb comes into play, but at the same time,
Volume 2 is basically, and now it's the Manhattan Project as well.
Yeah, like the thing about the atom bomb is it was the greatest bluff in history, kind of, sort of, because they had one they needed to test to make sure the process would work, and that went up in New Mexico, and then they had 2 more, and the one gets dropped on Hiroshima, and they're like, surrender. And Japan goes, why would we do that? And we're going to go like, we'll go look at Hiroshima. And they go look at Hiroshima. They're like, we're not fucking surrendering. This was like a freak of nature. There's no way. It's like, we have another. We'll do it. And then they did it. They're like, okay, I guess we're fucking surrendering because apparently they have more of these. And they didn't. It would have taken at least another year to make another bomb. So you've got the German tankmen that can be produced in about a month, and once Germany gets some breathing room, guess what they do? And then you've got fucking America, who's got 3 bombs. Uh-oh. I wonder how this will go. I don't know. Maybe the best case scenario is literally everybody loses, and we mean everybody, and the whole world blows up. Maybe that's the best case scenario, because I take that over Nazis get to rule everything.
Yeah, probably. It's just one of those interesting things, because where this sets up, I think keeps it in the realm of possibility of like everyone has a chance. Even in the case of like, okay, the Nazis clearly have like the best battleships. They've got the three who are like fully grown and fully stronger, but even they aren't like invincible. And there's only three of them, and I think they have a point of like, oh yeah, we have three people, and we have like so many different battlefields. We can't like transport them quick enough. They're just three people-sized things, so they literally have to shoot the female one to go to London. They have to fucking fire in a rocket. Saying stuff. So it's like one of that becomes one of the things of just like, I'm gonna have to start bluffing and pretending there are like more of them on the battlefield to like confuse people because they can't exactly check. So that the resource game is really important, which going into it you wouldn't really expect because you just assume, oh, superpowers means effectively infinite resources. It's like, no, superpowers means less fucking resources because you have to use all what other resources you've got to make more superpowers.
Found that really interesting.
What do you think of the art?
It's very, very graphic. The amount of blood and guts. I can't help but think that's the thing that Alan Moore is really into. Like, I like to think that Alan Moore is just like.
Has it got a rape scene in issue 1? Yes, Alan.
I like to think that Alan Moore is just like all. That's why he fucking likes it, man. Are you fucking kidding me? That's all he did is I read issue 1 and there was a rape scene and it's one of the best comics ever.
I've ever read.
No, it's like that's the fucking thing. It's the most. Alan Moore is just like that fucking teenager. Just like, oh, the fucking blood and gore is so cool. And he just like dresses it up better and puts a British accent on it and pretends to be fancy. You know, that thing you do.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and so it's just fucking like the art is just horrifying. And, you know, it's funny to talk about Alan Moore because that is kind of the only thing I can think of to compare it to is like the shit Dr. Manhattan was pulling, you know? We're just fucking blood and gore and guts everywhere in the fucking like pages of the giant squid attack. That's the only other thing I've seen in a comic that like legitimately tries to be this damn bloody. Like I've read Punisher Max and it's not as bloody as this. This is just unpleasant to look at.
That's the key word. Is this is not a good time to even look at. And I think that's the probably the best compliment you could give it because it's could like as good as the writing are, as good as the premise are, like that could easily go wrong if it was by like someone who made all these characters look really cool and like really heroic and the actions like a fuck yeah moment and stuff like it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't have that impact. The fact that we've got able to show just these acts of horror and these acts of depravity where what would normally be like, oh, they're doing like a massive, cool explosion, yeah, is turned into, holy shit, run for your lives. There's just fucking arms flying everywhere, and no one gets a painless fucking death in this, which is good on the Hitler side. That's pretty satisfying to watch. But like Churchill as well probably deserves a painful death as well, and like he gets it fucking bad. No one gets off easy in this. No one. The sheer fact that you give these power people not just like super strengths, like rip bodies apart, but like effectively, yeah, Dr. Manhattan shit on like a much smaller scale where it can warp things, it can create bridges with like the halo effect. Like it gives it a leeway to be creative. But also just, yeah, there's no, when you can kill someone by looking at them, there's a lot of creative ways for that to happen, and none of them are pleasant.
Like I liked the level of brutality and just how unpleasant it is. The comparison I kind of made just out loud while you were talking there was, it's a fucking horror comic in the way it does the art. It is not trying to glorify it or not trying to make it look cool, like you said. It is trying to make it as disturbing as it can on screen, or on the panel. And I think that it does that very effectively, and it kind of shows you the intensity of the thing. I like the kind of escalation of things that they try to do here. Like, I like the armored tank man V3 versus the battleship. I thought that was interesting. It was like, okay, well, the tank man's halo effect has very little effect on the battleships, but maybe just the raw strength. If we really soup up just the strength and abandon the halo effect for them, maybe that will be enough to do at least lasting damage to one of the battleships. And it's like, nope, that didn't work out for you, did it? I also like just, I don't know, let me ask you this, because I think there is maybe one other mistake in choice that we could talk about here. Besides the Japanese tank men, I don't think we actually follow any standard tank men. I think we only follow battleship characters here. And I can't help but feel like that's a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, that's something where I guess the argument you can make is we don't really follow anyone. We just follow the most important things, and by their nature, wherever they go is where the most important thing is happening. But that's why we don't really stick with like a person who's just living. We don't even follow civilians in this. We don't really see what the general public thinks, because it's not really what the story's trying to tell. It's like, you could do an entire story set in this universe of just, what does a fucking reading the news every day look like now? Because of this is insane. So I think I wouldn't say it goes far as calling that a structural mistake in the same way. That is definitely a choice for what kind of story this is going to be. You could have done like a really personal, like, on the boots, you're a general tank man who's got the halo effect, but you haven't got anything extra, and what does it look like to serve like that? That could be a story. It'd just be a different one.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of that just as we were talking here. I'm like, I have a hard time, I guess, comprehending the power difference, because the tank men almost become just fodder for the battleships, you know? And it becomes difficult to comprehend the power. And
power scale.
Yeah, the power scaling.
Power scalers.
Yeah, the power scaling's just all the way up. I don't know, it just becomes difficult to like comprehend the stakes, I guess. Like, I don't really know, like, what are the battleships capable of that the tank men aren't, beyond just being stronger? Like, could the tank men have as refined control of the halo effect as the battleships have shown to? Just stuff like that. It kind of lingering questions I'm left with, because we don't get to spend much time just with the tank men, with individual tank men.
Oh, I think that's definitely a good thing to bring up, especially with something that does put such thought into setting up the lore behind the powers and how that works. And that is definitely something that does get fleshed out even more later, but just in these 11 issues, that is a good point to bring up.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else on this. It was definitely an interesting watch, or read rather. I'm used to reading comics in physical form, and I read these all digitally. So my brain's all cross-wired. It was definitely an interesting read. I do think I want to try to go back and read the rest of it. I'm just not sure if I'm going to have the chance to right away. But Yeah, it definitely did. It did pique my interest. I'm very disappointed to know that the final issues held up in legal shenanigans. God damn it.
It's annoying, and I just want to say as well before we close out that the artist is, and forgive me for any butchering the name, is Cannon White. Yeah, you did a horrific job on me, buddy. Like you fucked me up, but well done. You deserve you accomplished what I'm definitely sure when you got the pitch for this you set out to do. So fantastic job there. But yeah, this is something that I would like to talk about more with, especially as we get to like the more American side of thing, because like that's where like it gets nuts, and specifically for you living in America, which didn't really, compared to the rest of the world, like didn't really get to have the scars of World War II. I think that'd be fascinating to get your thoughts on. So if people in the comments want us to do this, if you fucking Nazis want us to keep ruining our lives by reading this, let us know, and maybe whenever like next year or something we'll do like a part 2 on the rest of this or something. So let us know that.
Perhaps. Alrighty. Well, damn it, now it's my turn for discussion.
Exactly, because they bailed on us.
I know, the bastards. What could I talk about? Kind of want to do something on the nature of, Alright, let's talk about revolutions. That should be interesting. Just the nature of what makes a revolution happen, what spurs it on, what makes it, what drives it. Let's talk about revolutions. Alright, so that'll be next week. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the champion, the oppressed.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.
Boom, 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 boom.